motivational quotes only work if you put in the work, right? Simply sticking those post-it notes on your mirror aren't going to do anything unless you action it. And again, my background's as a behaviorist, so I'm really curious about the habits, the actions, the tools, and the skills that we put into practice so we can build these big, bright, beautiful futures.
Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Caprino, and welcome to my podcast, Finding Brave. I've created this show for everyone who longs to create something bold and brave in their life, to rise up, speak up, and stand up for who they are, and to reach their highest and biggest visions. Each week, I'll be speaking with inspiring guests from all walks of business, leadership, entertainment, the creative arts, and the entrepreneurial world. And they'll be sharing their intimate stories of finding brave and offer their best strategies for building your most rewarding, joyful, and meaningful life, business, and career. Hey folks, is it finally time to make a big change in your career, but you just can't figure out how to do it? It's time for help and time to invest in yourself and finally understand and shift what hasn't been working for you. Join me as I coach and guide you through powerful, proven steps that will unlock your fullest and happiest potential. I've worked with thousands of professionals across 6 continents, and the results have been transformative for them. For a limited time, also take advantage of my 10% discount for you, my amazing Finding Brave listeners. Save 10% off my one-on-one 6-session career and leadership breakthrough program and my most powerful you video training course that helps you close the 7 most damaging power and confidence gaps that are in the way of your ultimate success and happiness. You can work with me in both of these programs for the comfort of your own home at your own pace. Now's the time. Don't wait. Build the career you're ready for. Check out the show notes below for details, and I can't wait to support you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Finding Brave. Kathy Caprino here. So excited. You hear these words every time, of course, but honestly, what I feel about this show is it allows me, it's like a master class in life, in wellness, in career and leadership growth, in how do we live the life that we are longing to, how do we heal? And today is no exception. I am so excited to have the inspiring Dr. Robyne Hanley-Dafoe with us in the middle of her amazing book launch. Thank you, Robyne. Thank you for joining.
Kathy, I'm so excited to be here with you and your listeners. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And we are talking about Robyne's new book. Let me get the title perfectly right. Stress Wisely, yes? Oh, how to be well in an unwell world. Holy crow. And we are specifically talking about why we always feel awful. Not always, but a lot. And how do we address that? How do we fix that? So before we dive in, let me tell you a little bit about Robyne because it is incredibly impressive. And you can read her full bio in the show notes. I hope you will. Described as one of the most sought after, engaging, thought-provoking, and truly transformative international speakers and scholars in the field, Dr. Robyne Hanley-Dafoe is a multi-award winning, and you've just won a few more awards for your book. Education and psychology instructor, author, and resiliency expert. She specializes in resiliency. And I have to tell you, I've dug into so many of your videos, and you said something about resiliency that we're going to definitely get into, which really made my eyes pop. Navigating stress and change, personal wellness in the workplace, and optimal performance, both personal and organizational, with over 18 years of university teaching, which is very eye-opening, I'm sure, and research experience. And as a 2-time TEDx speaker, Robyne continues to create accessible and relatable materials while offering practical strategies that are realistic and sustainable. That's important. You have done over 750 keynotes, I've read. Oh, my goodness. And workshops. And you recently joined a group of highly esteemed authors around the globe as a 2022 Nautilus Award recipient with your first book, Calm Within the Storm. But we are talking most heavily about Stress Wisely. So thank you again for taking the time. Can't wait to dive in.
Yes.
Now, everyone, you know this, there's a guest prep sheet that my beautiful guests fill out. And
something you said in this, Robin, really, really caught me. Here it is. Our bodies literally are not equipped or evolved to physically manage the stresses of modern life. So if you feel like you're struggling, you're not alone, but there are ways to manage and mitigate this stress that are tried and true, as well as tools you have not heard about. So can we dive in first? You have a definition of resiliency, and you also talk about the way I interpreted it is we don't wake up saying, I want to be resilient.
Mhm.
We're forced to be resilient. Is that accurate? Can you just tell us a little bit, ground us in what is resiliency?
Yeah, absolutely, Kathy. Again, thank you for asking such a big, beautiful question. So, one of the things, again, I've been in this field for many, many years. And when I was working with some of the most resilient people you could imagine on the planet and learning about their practices and how they were able to manage everything, one of the kind of themes that kept coming up was they would say things like, Robin, I don't see myself as being resilient. I don't think I'm particularly strong or tough yet. You were, I would say, but you were like, look what you've survived, look what you've accomplished, look what you bounced back from. And what they said that was so beautiful, Kathy, was they said, Robin, I was resilient because life didn't give me another choice. That like I had to show up because I had a family counting on me. I had a community, I had a parent, I had a neighbor. I had to be able to find a way through this super dark season of my life because this work mattered to people I cared about. And that just radically transformed how I approached my research and my work around human resiliency and well-being. Because again, as I said, people don't sign up for this, but when they're called upon, people will rise. People will find a way through even the most darkest hours.
I know your content is amazing because I've already written 5 questions that I need to understand, like I'm writing furiously. Let me dig into that for a second, may I?
Please.
And people, we don't prep for this, so I'm really launching at you with, may not be, of course you're prepared to talk about it, but not in the way that you've thought about it 1 second before this. Do you find in all your research that people who have people counting on them, there might be a shorter trajectory for resilience because they feel they have to?
Yeah, 100%. It's so
Wow.
hard to advocate for ourselves, to look after
Mm.
ourselves. Yet when we're doing it for a loved one, when we're doing it for a person in need, when we're doing it for somebody who can't do it for themselves, we will find a way. And that's what's just so remarkable about the human condition is that we're social beings, that we have this whole other ability to be able to show up and protect the people around us. It's how we've been able to survive this long is that we do genuinely care about other people.
Okay. So that's fascinating to me. Now, another thing you talked about, and I think it's important for people to understand, you talked about in another video I watched hope.
Mm.
And the way you talked about it was so practical and so grounded, I felt. I've been through the dark side of the moon and still go through it. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody's life is really every day a walk in the park. We have to pivot, we have to change. Things are coming at us that we never expected. I'm an American, you can imagine what's going on here. But can you talk about how hope fits into resiliency and how you define it?
Yes. So in my work, we identified that there were like 5 variables or these pillars that held people up and helped them build comebacks when they were
Mm.
going through a difficult time. And hope is one of those pillars. And so often I think people overlook the power of hope, but hope is a strategy. We have to trust that better days are ahead. We have to believe wholeheartedly that there is going to be a way through this, that there is going to be this opportunity, there's going to be possibility that things are going to get better. And when we lose hope, to me, that's actually part of the definition of actually depression, when the body loses the capacity to hold on to hope. And what we know is that actually starts to lead to the downfall. When we're able to cultivate practices, routines, habits where we're choosing to live hope filled, it radically transforms our physiology and our psychology, and it allows us to see what's possible. And it put those moments together so it's one foot in front of the other because other people have walked this path. We're not alone in what we're navigating. And when we trust and sometimes even surrender, Kathy, which is hard because when the world is falling apart, we want to grip it tighter. But when we just surrender that, not that everything happens for a reason. And I'll tell you, that's one of those kind of sayings that actually gets my heart hurting, because not everything happens for a reason. Some things are just awful. It's what you do with the pieces afterwards that's really going to talk about the quality of your life.
My God, can we talk for 7 hours? Let me say a few things, then I want to talk about the five pillars, but I do want to respond to that. I do think that things happen for a reason, but not the reason a human brain can access.
Exactly.
Not a reason you would ever sign up for in this human life. But I've seen past lives. This is getting crazy woo-woo, but I've seen glimpses of future.
Yeah.
I feel we're bigger than this.
Yeah.
And our soul signs up for things the human life would not.
Yes.
So that helps me have hope, and it helps me give other people hope, because being in the long arc of people's lives, like I was laid off in the worst possible time in what I felt was the worst possible way after 9/11. Never would I have signed up for that. But when you're in the long arc of someone's life, you see that the thing that they dreaded the most was the thing that was needed the most.
Yeah, if it's okay to share, I
Please.
absolutely wholeheartedly echo your sentiment there. And I think it's when we try to put like kind of what we talk about, like earthly eyes on things, that we try to process it and make sense in this reality in terms of like where we live. And again, I don't think that this is woo-woo, this is science. We are energetic beings. And so I wholeheartedly believe that there is such a bigger story being told. And when we try to look at it from just one page, it will never be in context. But when we trust, and that's where that hope comes from, or some call it faith or whatever we want to call it, that's what actually is one of our greatest strengths, that we can surrender, that all things will work out in the end. And it's when people aren't able to give themselves permission to trust, right? To give themselves just that gift of having that faith or having that trust that this is going to be okay. We actually know that, again, that's what's really holding so many people back right now. And again, I see it each and every day. And I love how Albert Einstein actually quoted, he said, you either have to believe that everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. You're not allowed to pick and choose. And again, so to me, it's just trusting. It's just trusting that all of this is working for good.
And did he believe everything was a miracle?
He believed everything was a miracle.
Einstein!
I know. And
I
he knew
love
some
every
about
quote
physics.
what a genius. So
Yeah.
far ahead of. Okay.
Yeah.
A few more questions, and I promise I
Sure.
want to hear about your framework.
Mhm.
I have lived in the past that kind of hope. How do I want to put this? That said, everything's going to work out. And it was when I was dumped out of corporate life after 9/11, and I said, I'm done with it. I can't ever return to that pain, and became a therapist and a coach. But I wasn't making enough money,
Mhm.
and we needed the money that I made.
Yeah.
But I kept saying, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. It's going to work out. It didn't work out.
Mhm.
And I will say I'll attribute to it not working out in some part because I wasn't looking at the right thing to fix. And part of that was saying it's all going to work out. So this is a hard question, but do you see times where hope is blind and in fact it stops us from taking the actions we need to take? Does this make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And I think that's leading up along that edge or that riff of about around toxic positivity,
Oh,
where it's
yeah,
like
talk about that.
everything is like rainbows and butterflies, and we just have to, manifest the future and it's going to be great. It's like, it's dreams don't work unless we do. And so it's doing that high level of self-awareness to realize, is this getting me closer to my goal? Is it getting me farther away from my goal? And again, when you look at stories of people who have had comebacks and overcome, like you described, like, this, all of a sudden your identity is shattered and you have to rebuild. Part of that rebuild, you're in that messy middle where you're picking up pieces to see whether or not this fits together. But if we do that with just this kind of like, again, that toxic positivity, that is just like, oh, I just have to trust. I have to trust. It's like, unless you action it up and you are ruthless in terms of looking at, is this getting me closer or farther away? Am I aligned with my values and my intention? Am I doing it for the right reasons? And I think what happens, those roadblocks are actually meant to be there, because what it's doing is it's actually seeing, first of all, do you really want this?
Mm.
Right? Giving you that chance to see, like, are you willing to push through that obstacle or that barrier? But also it's asking yourself, like, it's giving us, I think life gives us these little pause buttons to actually say, is this really what you want? Because there's going to be consequences on the other side of it. And it's giving us time to reevaluate, to see whether or not this is what I want to be doing, or if there's a place where I could be better served somewhere else.
Oh, fantastic. Could you repeat what you said? Dreams work only when we work. What's the
Yeah,
quote?
dreams only work if you do. Like,
Is that
like,
your quote? That
there
is,
you go. Yeah,
I adore it.
yeah, it's like, I love how people, and I even in my first book, I had a note where it's like, motivational quotes only work if you put in the work, right? Simply sticking those post-it notes on your mirror aren't going to do anything unless you action it. And again, my background's as a behaviorist, so I'm really curious about the habits, the actions, the tools, and the skills that we put into practice so we can build these big, bright, beautiful futures.
I love it. And I know you would agree with this. I think I have found that insight doesn't change our life, as you're saying. It's action, but not any kind of action. It's action different from what you've done before.
Exactly.
That's what I feel that people aren't doing. They're doing the same kind of action, but it's digging a deeper hole. Boy, all right, we're getting to the 5 pillars, but one final question. Oh, where'd it go? Hang on. It was about resilience and it's gone. Oh no. Uh it's gone, so it'll have to come back later. So let's talk about the pillars, the 5 pillars. What do we not understand that we need to understand and that we need to do that we're not quite. Oh no, here it was. Oh good.
I'm glad.
You said the human system
Mhm.
isn't designed for what we've got. It's so important for you to tell us about this. Tell me what you mean.
Well, so I love this question. So what we've come upon in our research, and we don't, again, as you said at the beginning, we don't practice resiliency for resiliency's sake. We do
Right.
it because we want to live big, beautiful lives. And one of the things that I got really curious about in my research is that the persons who had their well-being practices like really dialed in before something happened, they were better resourced to be able to be resilient when called upon. So I got really curious about what was that all about. I wanted to unpack that. And what I came upon was, if we think, for example, if we just take our nervous system or our biology, it was not designed for 24-hour news cycles. It wasn't designed for 5 a.m. clubs and hustle culture. It was designed to have moments of rest. It was designed to have seasons of ease and peace and restoration. So, our nervous system, and that's why I always kind of say this jokingly, but there's the truth in it. Like, I don't trust anything I think after 8 p.m. because I know after 8 p.m., I have burned through all of my resources that I was designed with my brain chemistry to be able to process in the most healthy way. And that's why we aren't sleeping really well. It's why our thoughts get away from us and we really get nervous. We get those, Sunday scaries before we go back to work on Monday because we haven't had time to rest our nervous system. So we're very much addicted to this stress cycle behavior that I'm seeing in my work right now, Kathy. And, we were meant to have a lot more ease, even when we look back on generations and different ecosystems where people were under enormous amounts of pressure, enormous amounts of global economic challenge. They still had opportunities for rest. And we're not doing that. We're selling ourselves short.
And is the biggest problem scrolling on our phones constantly?
I think the biggest problem is that we have no peace. And sometimes peace is having some pretty good boundaries where I'm not going to scroll my way through this. Instead, I'm going to turn off the phone. I'm going to go outside and go for a 15-minute walk, which will do enormous amounts of benefit to you physiologically. It's turning off the phone and taking a 20-minute nap so your body can process some of that adenosine so you're not plagued with really poor brain health. It's doing those things that we know physiologically our body is craving, yet we are really not really tuned in to what it is. And what I often share with persons is like, I love our culture. I love being able to work really hard and earn and be able to support my family. And I love my children growing up with privilege 100%. but I'm not doing it at the cost of my well-being anymore. And
Mm.
I'll share with you if it's okay. I had this experience several years ago. I was sitting at the kitchen table. I had a horrible, no good, rotten day at work. And I was sitting there just kind of, complaining about this frustrated situation, which again, it was just the reality of what it was. I felt really trapped in it. And my oldest son at the said to me, he was 15 years old, and Hunter said to me, he goes, "Mama, you told me when I grow up, I can be anything I possibly could imagine if I work hard and my intentions are aligned." And I said, "Yeah, dude, you can be anything you want if you work hard and your intentions are right." And he said, "Why can't you? Like, how do you get to where you are and you have to stay in this environment?" And I said, "Well, the university, it's safe. That's how I'm able to provide for you guys." And he said, "Mama, I'd bet on you every single day." He's like, "There's no one that will work harder." And he's like, "Can you just go do whatever it is that you want to be doing?" And that was the
Gosh.
moment. Next day, I left my post at the university and took up this, I had something to say about resiliency and I wanted to write a book. And I had got this whole new opportunity because I recognized what I was doing up to that point. It was like living the dream shouldn't kill you. And it was
My
burning me
God.
out.
What a bit. How old is he now?
Now he is 20. And
Oh,
yeah,
what a dear.
yeah,
Out of the mouth
yeah,
of babes or teens.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And nothing like putting a mirror up. I
Yeah.
mean, if we're not doing what we are teaching, what the heck? I mean, come on.
Exactly.
What a
Yeah.
great. However, what we're not talking about, maybe that's one of your pillars. We'll get there. My
Yeah.
God, in 10 minutes. The reason people don't do it is risk. We're
Yes.
we're terribly afraid.
Mhm.
Terribly afraid. So let's talk about that, but through your framework. But I do
Yeah.
want to say this. When you talked about those wellness strategies, I realize at this wise old age, if I am not walking, usually for 90 minutes a day, if I'm not getting sun, if
Yes.
I'm not touching nature,
Yeah.
I am not well. Like
Yeah.
and frankly, for me, sun makes a big difference. So
Yeah.
I do have seasonal affective disorder. I have a
Yes.
lamp. I need to touch nature
Yes.
or I am not myself. And the
Yeah.
second thing, and maybe this is helpful to people, but here in the US, I mean, because I write and I want to be abreast of current events, I can find myself on the phone reading news
Mhm.
constantly. I
Yeah.
today that's it. No. I am going to read maybe 7 headlines,
Yeah.
watch the certain news show I watch, and that
Mhm.
has to be it.
Yeah.
So I think that what we're all asking here is I think if you tune into yourself what makes you feel sick.
Yes, absolutely. And the body's natural state is to be in a place of healing, right? So the body naturally tries to re-regulate. So you're scrolling on the phone and all of a sudden, all of this content's coming in, your body starts to feel anxious and then it's going to start to go numb, right? Because it's trying to protect itself. Or my favorite is when you're scrolling with your left hand and your hand goes numb because like the blood circulation's cut off and we just switch hands, right? So like our body is giving us so much data
It's
that
so
this
true.
isn't what I want to be doing, yet we go on autopilot and
Oh,
it's just this big numbing of all of those big feelings. So yeah, it's so important that we tune in, and self-awareness is that starting point. And it's okay, because I know right now, and I talk to so many people that feel like, they're so scared to miss out, that they feel like they have to be doing everything and be tuned in everywhere. When you take a step back and have that like zoomed out view, all of a sudden you can say like, whoa, I'm not a rat in this rat race, right? Like I'm allowed to. And then what I love so much about the human condition is we do just like a little bit of the right thing and we are going to feel remarkably better. Right. Because we can't hate ourselves healthy, right? Like just running into a class and jumping on a treadmill and beating yourself up and then jumping off and running to the next thing. Like that's never going to bring us the peace and the groundedness. And again, it's not woo-woo, it is science. Like there is such a different way to feel. And what we
oh,
saw, for example, is as you just shared, that brisk walk in the morning,
oh,
sunlight, water, and walking first thing in the morning, it radically transforms your day. It decreases all-cause mortality by 60%.
no
Yet
way.
people are chasing on, these on the treadmills and all that. It doesn't have to be that way.
Oh my gosh. Say this again. You can't hate yourself. Say it.
Healthy. You can't hate yourself healthy. And that's probably the
This
biggest
is the biggest one.
misconception about all of this. We can't shame ourselves into doing better. We can't guilt ourselves into changing behavior. We got to meet ourselves as a trusted ally that says, okay, you know what? This has gotten me to this point in my life, and I'm choosing to find a different way through. And it's possible. And the more and more people I see take this philosophy and psychology approach, it's a beautiful thing.
So much. I mean, it makes me think of weight loss. It makes me think of people who are so driven to get on the treadmill and lift
Yeah.
weights, and that's great if you're loving yourself in the process. But if
Yeah.
you're looking yourself in the mirror doing it, you're hating yourself. Oh,
Yeah.
all right, my dear, walk us through the 5 things we have to understand, will you?
There you go. So thank you for asking. So the first of the 5 pillars is belonging. We have to have a home team. We need community. We're designed to be with people. That's where we get our psychological safety from. It's one of those things that no matter what happens, even the messy parts of me, I have this one person in my world. So our belonging matters. We also know it's perspective, being able to like critically think and problem solve in the world, but also feel our way through the world, knowing what matters most and making it matter most in real time is important. The third pillar we talk about is acceptance, working within our controllables. We really need to just focus on what's within our control and what's outside of our control and put our energy where it's most used. The fourth one was hope, as we already touched on. And
Wow.
interesting, this is a wee bit of a wild card. The fifth variable we learned about was actually humor. We learned that play, joy, merriment is actually a coping strategy for the most beautiful way of building this tapestry of human resiliency. And at first, we thought it was a defense mechanism, really, but we learned, for example, when you laugh, your body releases a natural tranquilizer. It blocks your pain receptors. So for that moment in time, you cannot feel pain. And it's the body's
No.
natural way of helping us just, again, it doesn't solve our problems, but it gives us a moment of reprieve, right? Just a moment to catch our breath so that way we can respond versus react. So the 5 of those together we see make the biggest difference.
I got questions.
Bring
Bring them
hit
on.
me.
I
Bring
have to
them.
tell you, I am one who I grew up kind of without a sense of humor, and there wasn't a lot of humor and jokes
Yeah.
in my house. But just lately, I went to a comedy show with my family, 9 different comedians.
Yeah.
I laughed my tush off. And this Friday, which
Yeah.
it has already passed when people
Yeah.
see this, I'm going to see
Oh, it's gonna be
John Bishop,
fun. Yeah.
a UK comedian who's so big. And
Yeah.
my son and I are going in the 4th row.
Yeah.
And I watch his Instagram reels and literally spit up out
Yeah.
loud. And I have noticed how much better I feel
Yes.
just doing that for
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's my sample of 1 and your sample of 10 million.
Yeah.
But I didn't know this. Say this again. When you're laughing, you
Yeah.
can't feel pain?
Yeah, your body releases a natural tranquilizer. So when you're laughing, it's like this state because you can't hold like worry and laughter at the same time. So it gives your body just a pause button on all that worry, all that stress, all that negative energy. It just pauses it, and then all of a sudden your body gets just this little blast of light, this little blast of joy, merriment, curiosity. And what happens is all of those endorphins start going, the oxytocin gets released, serotonin starts to flow, and it's the same actually as laughing is one of the other one we talk about is like petting a dog, right? We actually
Yeah.
know that's why people right now I think are more connected to their animals than some people, because it's just this pure joy of being able to like have this. Dogs
Love.
show us with their actions, obviously not words, the importance of bonds. So again, yeah, there's like all of these things that are naturally in our environment. We are designed to be able to heal ourselves, to re-regulate. And again, it's not woo-woo. That's what we see in this physiological research. And I can even share with you the notion of laughter as that kind of medicine isn't new. Like they used to call it like gallows humor. Like when people were like in the gallows being executed, they called it lunacy, where people would be like joy filled and they'd be laughing and joking around. And folks would be like, hey, don't you know what your outcome's about to be? And their bodies would just they would say it would just come over them because it's the body's natural way of just easing the
Oh,
heaviness of the world.
I never knew what gallows humor meant.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes me
Newsroom humor.
cry.
They call it newsroom humor, ER humor. It's just the way that humans cope. And again, I've done work with, Navy SEALs, and like they have some of the most, remarkable stories of things they've been exposed to. Yet their camaraderie, their brotherhood, and their humor is actually one of the strategies on how they're able to do what they do.
My gosh, this is so good. All right, this is my way of digging into each of those pillars. Can I ask a quick question on each of those and then
Please.
I'll let you go? Belonging. From what I'm seeing, a lot of people think if they only have one good friend, it's not enough. And they see other people having, 20 friends. I have a lot of friends. I play tennis, I sing, but I have one or two who I can tell anything to. My guess is belonging doesn't mean you have 50 friends.
Yeah,
Can you
probably
tell
the
us,
opposite.
can you
Yeah.
tell us one message about that to
Yeah,
help
I
people
think
understand?
there's this pressure, Kathy, that people are just trying to fit in. And fitting in is different than belonging.
Oh,
Fitting in is I have a friend that's going to love the messy parts of me. And I know no matter whatever happens, that person has my back. It's just that allyship. It's that deep connection and that bond. So we can have a lot of acquaintances, but more often than not, those big groups, we're fitting in. Whereas you got to find your person. And it doesn't have to be the same person for your whole lifespan. It could be different at different seasons, but it's really nurturing and protecting those relationships. And what we do see is those larger tribes and those larger social groups, people report higher levels of isolation and more competition, right? So at the highest level of, let's say, two women as friends, at the highest level, it's collaboration. At the lowest level with other women, it's competition.
how about men? Is there competition too?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yes, there is 100%. It looks different. So usually we see high level that there's going to be more competition, but that ties into our evolution psychology, where when there's more of this in the mix, competition starts to take over. So they actually see that again, that small group builds more collaboration. So there is a little bit of a gender difference there, but for women,
Fascinating.
especially at the top, they're collaborating. Like all of the top women who we have seen rise to really amazing accomplishments, they've collaborated with the right people. At the bottom, it's competition.
Oh my gosh, I love every word of this. Number two, perspective. What came to mind when you said it, how do I want to put this? Perspective doesn't come just because you want it.
Mm-hmm.
There are conditions I have found that are conducive to gaining higher perspective. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so our perspective increases in relation to our lived experience. The more experiences we have, our perspective is going to grow. So if you're, for example, just a really practical way of thinking about it, if you're, for example, trying to have a difficult conversation with someone who doesn't have a lot of perspective
Hmm.
because they haven't really ever grown that perspective, essentially you're trying to have a conversation with an unskilled person. So instead of just getting so frustrated and kind of going around in circles, for your own self to be able to just have that moment of reflection where it's like, wow, I'm trying to have a very difficult conversation with an unskilled person. Instead of me carrying that negativity, carrying that frustration, I'm just going to let that go. And again, it's not a matter of like judging other people. It's protecting our peace, right? So often we get ourselves tangled up in all of this discourse when again, ultimately, a lot of us are trying to have, do the work with unskilled persons. And it's robbing us of our joy. It's robbing us of the spaciousness to just feel healthy and grounded and able to do the good work.
What an important concept. How I take that in this moment. I've recently had a situation where there was a schism, and no amount of my talking about it, and look at me, I lose my voice,
Yeah.
is going to get through. I walked away.
Yeah.
And what this requires is boundaries and
Mhm.
self-love and an understanding that you can bloody yourself against the wall all you want, but the message that you're trying to get across probably isn't going to be met with the understanding you are hoping for if it's an unskilled thinker. Is
Yeah.
that the right way
Yeah.
to put it?
Absolutely. And so often what people will say is like, Robyne, I just can't let it go, right? Like how do you let things go? And my gentle invitation is if we want to radically change how we're feeling and you're kind of stuck in that tug of war, go find somebody to help. Literally volunteer to take out somebody's, trash at the end of recycle for some, drop off their bin of donations that they drive around in their car for 3 months, be like, hey, what can I do? Give me something to help you with. Because the best way to have that energetic shift psychologically to get out of that tug of war is just go help somebody, anybody, help, even just
It
put
gets
cold
the focus
Gatorades.
off,
Yeah.
woe is me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
so much here.
I just put a cold Gatorade for your delivery person. Like it does, like as soon as you do an act of service, it gets you out of that tug of war. So you recognize I'm having a conversation with an unskilled person. I don't encourage you to tell the person that, right? That's just knowledge for
That's
you.
hurtful. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
So
so
that's just for you.
unskilled.
Yeah, that's just for you. But what it does is it lets go of those chains of the tug of war and then just go help somebody.
Oh my gosh, beautiful. All right, we're almost there. Acceptance. Now, I think it's all of these things are so nuanced. That's why you all have to read Robyne's book. But there's a certain kind of acceptance that leads to resignation, sadness, hopelessness. That's not the kind of acceptance you're talking about. Can you frame it for us?
Yeah, I think sometimes where people struggle with acceptance is this idea that they think it means approval, and it's not approval. I can actually detest something that's happening, but recognize it's what my reality is right now. And instead of asking, why is this happening to me? I'm going to say, what's my next right move out of it? Who do I need to talk to? How do I level up or skill up? Or what do I need to do? I'm not going to sit there and let a situation drain me of my resources. I'm going to put my energy, my influence where it's going to have the biggest kind of return on the investment. And that's something I see people get stuck for decades asking why questions. And I don't think that there are answers in our lifetime to some questions. And asking yourself, what do I do with this situation? What's my next right move? Who is somebody is a trusted ally that I can lean into to help show me the way or the path through this? And again, that's why it comes back to communities. It's the people we bring into our lives, that people whose paths cross ours, that make such an important impact on our recoveries and being able to be resilient.
Okay, one more question because we talked about hope, we talked about humor, but let's dig into this one thing. I'm struggling, so I use
Yeah.
my amazing podcast guest as my therapist. When you're talking about something enormous,
Mhm.
let's say like COVID, but what I'm talking about is many people in my country on either side of the
Yeah.
fence are feeling so scared
Mhm.
and so worried
Mhm.
about where things are going. And I think many of us also worry for our children, whether that's climate change, whatever issue people that you is on your mind. When I see something as big as that, I think that some of the practices we have are not big enough.
Mhm.
This is a existential worry. That's what I would call, whether you're talking about the political landscape, the climate,
Yeah.
where we're going, war.
Yeah.
Do you have one? And I do not mean to reduce any of this to some little platitude or but when you're talking about an existential fear,
Mhm.
what is the best way to handle that?
Well, first of all, I think we have to first acknowledge it's happening, right? I think so many people are ignoring and overriding. They're not actually holding space to say, you know what, this is scary. This is a big deal. Lives are at stake. This is gigantic. So,
Mm.
first of all, it's just calling it what it is. And in that same breath, I believe that we are at such a special time in our evolution because we are coming into what's called the fourth turning. And what I mean by that is if
Ooh.
we look historically at groups at other times when they felt like all hope was lost, when they thought that this is the darkest days, look at what comes on the other side of that. Look at what comes on the other side of the First World War. We went into, the 20s, right? Like historically as a species, we have been able to rally, we have grown, we've learned, we've evolved, we've adapted. And I am so hope-filled for the future for my children, for my grandchildren, like down the road, people I haven't even yet met yet in my ancestry. I'm so encouraged because I believe, again, after these very difficult crisis seasons, what we see historically is that there's going to be a recalibration. And yes, it's going to be painful to get there. And then we're going to realize that we have to do this in a different way. And this is not the first time human history that we've been put in a situation. It's our first time. But there is so much wisdom from the people who've gone before us and in our ancestors who have shown us the way through it. So I think right now it feels very scary because it is very scary. It is
Wow.
so uncertain right now. And there is still so much beauty and joy and hope. And when we look at I was recently working with a group of educators, and they said, these principals said to me, whenever I lose hope in the education system, I go read a book to the kindergartners, to the little preschool kids, because hope is bountiful there. And we have to find a way to shift from everything that's wrong to, despite the things that are wrong, the things that are actually right. And we're having difficult conversations in the workplace that we've never had before about women's rights. We are protecting marginalized groups in different ways that we've never had those conversations before. This is the messy middle, but we're going to get to the other side, and the future is so very bright.
I want to say nothing after that. Just want, although I'm dying to know, is there a fifth turning? What is a fourth? Is there?
Yeah, there's
stop.
I'll let you go. Yeah, it's a concept in history about the cycles. It's kind of the same notion that, every third generation we start to see a hit financially to the fourth generation, because you had one group that works really, really hard for it, and then you have that group that's raised by those hard workers, and then you get a really privileged group that comes out of that next, and then they have a tendency of making poor choices, and then it starts again. So from an economic perspective, a sociological perspective, this is not my field at all, but this is the field that I lean into and I learn from to give me hope sometimes when the psychology field feels a little bit hopeless. So again, using different pieces of information, we see history does repeat itself, but we also can learn some beautiful things from it. It's there, it's out there. We just have to find it.
I find you so inspiring and uplifting. I feel so much better than I did an hour ago. Thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for your 2 books. Thank you so much for the research. Where can people learn all about you? Where do they get your book? Tell us. And
there
we'll
you
link
go.
to it below.
Thank you. So the book is available wherever you get your favorite books. If you find an independent bookstore, that's great. It also could be shipped tomorrow too, if you go for something quicker. And also all my information's on the website at drrobyne.ca.
Thank you so much. Thank you again. What a joy. People, I will say to you, I hope you feel uplifted, and I hope you have a question. Look, I couldn't get through, 5 seconds without writing 52 questions. It's so rich and so deep. That's why we know it's so important, the work you're doing, Robyne. But we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love a question. Reach out to either of us, wherever you see this, about the struggle that you're having. I know something in Robyne's book will address it. It must, but we'd love to hear from you, and we hope this is uplifting. To me, it's the definition of the finding brave path. Really, we need bravery when we're feeling down and hating ourselves. We need bravery, and all of these steps are on that path. Thank you again, Robyne. Come back again.
And I'd love to. Thanks, Kathy.
That would be so when you're with your next book or sooner, please. And everyone, I hope you enjoyed this, and I wish you a beautiful Finding Brave 2 weeks, and we will see you next time. Bye. Hi, folks. Kathy here. So are you thinking about launching a new podcast, or have you been at it a while and recognize it's time for more or better production help to create the best podcast you can? I totally understand. I've been podcasting for over 6 years, and I know how challenging it can be. That's why I'm really excited to share some key information about the great production team I'm using now called We Edit Podcasts. I've been working with them for well over a year, and I've been so happy with the results. They're a full-service production agency, and their services give me access to a wonderful team of seasoned audio engineers and editors who help create a polished professional sound. And they work hard to ensure that my particular podcasting approach and style comes through in every episode. They also help me make sure that my guests are reflected in the best possible light through the creation of terrific show notes, which is an important part of the show for me. Their process is easy and streamlined, and their responsiveness and customer service is terrific too. If you're ready for better production help, definitely check them out and take advantage of their free trial episode, allowing you to sample their process and quality to see if it's a great fit for you. I'm confident you'll love them. Just go to the link weeditpodcasts.com/findingbrave. That's my special link for you, and book your free call today. Happy podcasting. Thanks so much for joining us today. And please don't forget to check out findingbrave.org for more programs, resources, and tips. And tune in next time for your weekly dose of Finding Brave.